Hello, we're reading from Derek Bell's Faces at the Bottom of the Well, one of the great books. I'm reading a section on slave traders. I'm almost done with this section, and then we can move on to another book. I know I've been in this book for a while, but it's important. So the lighting is a little off, it's dark, had a lot to do today, so I'm filming this a little later. Excuse me for that. Let's get into it. 11 January. Unconfirmed media reports asserted that U.S. officials tried in secret negotiations to get the space traders to take and trade only those black currently under the jurisdiction of the criminal justice system, that is, in prison or on parole or probation. Government negotiators noted that this would include almost one half of the black males in the 20 to 29-year-old age bracket. Negotiators were also reported to have offered to trade only blacks locked in inner cities, but the space traders stated that they had no intention of turning their far-off homeland into an American prison colony for blacks. In rejecting the American offer, the space traders warned that they would withdraw their proposition unless the United States halted the flight of the growing number of middle-class blacks who, fearing the worst, were fleeing the country. In response, executive orders were issued and implemented, barring blacks from leaving the country until the space traders' proposition was fully debated and resolved. It is your patriotic duty, blacks were told by the White House, to allow this great issue to be resolved through the democratic process and in accordance with the rule of law. To ensure that the trade debate and the referendum were concluded in a non-coercive environment, all blacks serving in the military were placed on furlough and relieved of their weapons. State officials took similar actions with respect to blacks on active duty in state and local police forces. 12 January. The Supreme Court cited precedent dating back to 1849, rejecting a number of appeals by blacks and their white supporters whose legal challenges to every aspect of the referendum process had been dismissed by lower courts as political questions, best resolved by the body politic rather than through judicial review. The Supreme Court's order refusing to intervene in the space traders' proposition was unanimous. The order was brief and per curiam, the court agreeing that the space trader litigation lacked judicially discoverable and manageable standards for resolving the issues. The court also noted that if inducted in accordance with a constitutionally approved conscription provision, blacks would have no issues of individual rights for review. Even if the court were to conclude that rights under the 14th Amendment were deserving of greater weight than the authority of the new constitutional amendment up for ratification. The standards of national necessity that prompted the court to approve the confinement of Japanese Americans during the Second World War would serve as a sufficient precedent for the induction and transfer of African Americans to the space traders. While not claiming to give weight to the public opinion polls reporting strong support for the trade, the court noted that almost a century earlier, in 1903, Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes had denied injunction relief to 6,000 blacks who petitioned the court to protect their right to vote. The bill alleged that the great mass of white population intended to keep the blacks from voting, but in view of such massive opposition, Holmes reasoned that ordering the blacks' names to be placed on the voting list would be an empty form unless the court also mandated electoral supervision by officers of the court. 14 January. With the legal question of the trade resolved, the U.S. government announced that as a result of intensive negotiations with the space trader leaders, the latter had agreed to amend their offer and exclude from the trade all black people 70 years old and older, and all those blacks who were seriously handicapped, ill, and injured. In addition, 1,000 otherwise eligible blacks and their immediate families would be left behind as trustees of black property and possessions. all of which were to be stored or held in escrow in case blacks were returned to this country. Each of the 1,000 black detainees was required to pledge to accept a subordinate status with suspended citizenship. Until such time as the Special Service inductees were returned to the country, the administration selected blacks to remain who had records of loyalty to the Conservative Party and no recorded instances of military or militant activity. Even so, many of those blacks selected declined to remain. "We will, like the others," said one black who rejected detainee status, "take our chances with the referendum." So here you see it's happening. How easy it is to legally um, get rid of black people in the United States. That might change with all the uproar this year, but then the way things are settling back down, I really think American blacks in particular are going to end up even worse than before we went into this whole um, protest. Because already American blacks are being pushed back to the basement for other people of color. And if American blacks don't get reparations for our ancestors and the slave work that they did, and if the United States doesn't give a UBI, then American blacks will just drop completely out of human existence. And that's not hyperbole. Trust me, we will drop right out of existence. Until next time, I thank you for your support. Take care of your mind, take care of your body, and be safe.